The other day, I was prepping for my first in-person D&D game in over a year, and I finally got to break out some of my new storytelling toys I had procured in preparation for this glorious moment. Some status rings, a few new 3D printed minis I'd painted, which came out okay, and my first set of modular terrain tiles I've ever owned from Dwarven Forge. And oh boy, designing my encounters with all of these tools was an absolute joy. But then it got me thinking, was my design experience also designed? Thanks so much to HelloFresh for helping to bring this episode to the table. In order to figure out if my design process was indeed incepted, I reached out to Dwarven Forge's Chief Creative Officer Nate Taylor. And spoiler alert, turns out it was. Because over their 25 years of creating hand-sculpted modular terrain for tabletop gaming, they followed a really interesting set of principles specifically focused on designing open-ended tools to encourage creation. As Nate describes it, their pieces are a toolbox of elements that game masters can harness to create exciting, evocative, and cinematic stages for telling a memorable story. But at the same time, these pieces also need to be reconfigurable into a variety of different scenes as diverse as a game master's imagination. To me, this sounded an awful lot like designing an RPG rule set or a campaign setting sourcebook, designing a collection of flexible tools that users can combine within a loose framework. And we figured you might be interested in how these pros approach this particular design challenge. So we asked Nate to share some of the secret lore of the Forge, and he delivered Dwarvenite tablets inscribed with a ton of tips for creating creative tools. Thanks, Nate. Here we go. 1. Establish your guiding principles. A great place to start is trying to define the whole of what you're creating with 4 to 6 evocative adjectives or phrases. This is your vision. For instance, if your project is some cavern terrain, your guiding principles could be feels claustrophobic, danger is everywhere, or even something as simple as wet. Then, as you create, check each aspect of your work against these guiding principles. Does this piece give me a feeling of claustrophobia? Does it provide danger? Does it look wet? The purpose of focusing on these statements is to make sure that all of your disparate elements feel cohesive once they're together, especially when your audience starts combining them in wacky ways. And believe me, they will. But you may be asking, how can someone plan to design around unexpected combinations? Well, that brings us to number 2. 2. Make your tools open-ended. The reality is, once your creation is out in the wild, users are going to engage with it in ways you never intended. And you can embrace this by giving room for your tools to grow once they're in your users' hands. This means don't make unnecessary rules to limit other people's creativity. With terrain, Nate says this means making sure that the pieces from wildly different environments can work together seamlessly, even if they never intended for people to mix fire and ice. But the same can go if you're designing classes for a tabletop RPG. Even if you assume no one's gonna cross-class a barbarian and wizard because of how non-optimal it is, someone's gonna do it, so make sure they can. And to ensure this process is enjoyable. 3. Bury synergies for people to discover. Beyond the baseline of users trusting that your system works, like how you're always sure that Lego bricks are gonna fit together, you want your design tools to also foster moments of discovery. If you're making terrain, this means embedding as much compatible geometry between pieces as you can. You don't tell your users it's there, but when they're building, they'll discover these synergies and get excited and feel clever, which in turn will prompt them to search for other interesting ways to combine pieces and actually find synergies that you never even intended. Another great example of this out in the gaming wild can be found in Magic the Gathering. WotC embeds so many synergies in their cards and sets that players often find combos that the designers never thought of, be they game-breaking or just thematic. But no matter which side of the coin that falls on, it's clear that they want to ensure that their users are continually combining their tools in interesting ways, just like we did when we created our Swole Spellslinger from before. The combos may not always be optimal, but you want to strive to never yuck someone else's yum. 4. Favor basics over specifics. Your end users are going to get more mileage out of basic building blocks, especially very versatile ones, than they ever will out of hyper-specific tools. In fact, as we've seen from the phenomenal things that people have built using simple blocks in Minecraft, having a bucket of basics often results in even more creativity. So as much fun as it would be to create like 10 different menacing hellgates, remember that most users would most likely get more mileage out of 10 different generalized pieces, especially if they can be used for similar effect. So ensure your design tools can deliver the basics before adding any niche elements. Limitation can often drive creativity after all. So, 5. Identify your limitations. Now, this is almost the same as the previous principle, But instead of focusing on your users, it really focuses on your design tools themselves. Figure out your limits, and then reduce the scope of your vision accordingly. This will let you more deeply explore an achievable idea and really nail it. For Nate and his team, this means instead of trying to sculpt every possible piece of architecture in the entire city of Waterdeep, they put their energy into only designing a few styles and ensuring that they're spectacular. And the same rings true for everything from a game engine or a narrative project, as any of these awesome things are surely going to have production and/or commercial limitations. Also, don't forget to embrace your own personal limitations as well, since everybody only has so much time, emotion, and energy that they can devote to a project. And finally, 6. Quantify your end goal. Always keep in mind the end user experience you want to generate, because when you get stuck, you'll always be able to pull your vision back to the satellite view level and ask yourself, is this specific detail that's given me trouble actually serving the final experience? With Dwarven Forge, their goal at the end of the day is to hand people an array of pieces which become the foundation for building not just a scene, but a story, and ultimately lasting memories around the gaming table. So the question needs to be asked of each piece they create: will this miniature sculpture help spark the creativity of collaborative storytelling? If it doesn't, it probably needs more time on the anvil or to be left on the cutting room floor. And this is true whether you're sculpting small pieces of Dwarvenite or even trying to design the next Roblox. So there you have it. The next time you're designing an RPG system, or a plugin, or heck, anything where you're asking your users to be creative with the toolset you've crafted, we hope you can look back on these principles if you ever get stuck, because they've helped Nate and his team craft phenomenal terrain to help dungeon masters weave vivid and exciting tales at their tables, and they can help your users continue to enjoy designing with the tools you've crafted again and again. Actually, speaking of which, Nate, how much would it run me to build, say, I don't know, like all of Castle Ravenloft in Dwarvenite? Right, no, yeah, limitations. Yes, good note, maybe I'll just stick with the tomb. And 100 vampires. What? Oh, wait a minute, how am I supposed to feed 100 vampires? I did not think this through. All right, looks like my neck is saved again by HelloFresh. No grocery stores or stressful meal planning for me. Just delicious recipes and amazing ingredients delivered right to my door. But Matt, you say, surely the time it takes to make such a feast is exorbitant. Haha, not so, fictitious naysayer I made up in my head. In fact, just this week, I crafted their beef flauta supreme in a cool 27 minutes. And I gotta tell you, those things were tasty. And due to HelloFresh's flexibility, Jeff was even able to upsize his latest order of balsamic fig chicken to accommodate additional house guests who didn't realize they weren't actually invited and their cat kind of just wanted a second dinner, but actually, it's really good, so just keep eating. Deliciousness of double dinner aside, another thing I really love about HelloFresh is their commitment to sustainability. Ingredients are pre-portioned so we waste less food, and it turns out the carbon footprint of their service is actually 25% smaller than that of meals made from store-bought groceries. And you can taste all of the awesomeness yourself thanks to this sweet deal. Just go to HelloFresh.com and use the code ExtraCredits14 to get 14 free meals, not to mention free shipping. Yes, you heard me correctly. You can get free food while supporting content you love, the environment, and your taste buds. Again, that's 14 free meals at HelloFresh.com using the code ExtraCredits14. There's never been a better time to get cooking. A huge thanks to our legendary patrons, O'Reels1, Kyle Murgatroyd, Joseph Blaine, Dominic Valenciana, Casey Muscha, Alicia Bramble, and Ahmed Ziad Turk.